Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. This is a Heel Heat Top 10. My name is George Coles. This is my tag team partner, Little Jimmy. Now, as you may have noticed, my normal partner, Gary Rhodes, is not here. There's a reason for that. This is going to be a solo Top 10. Basically, this is my Top 10 favorite. At some point, Gary's going to make his as well. So let's get right into it. My number 10 favorite wrestler of all time is Daniel Bryan. I'm more of a Daniel Bryan fan when he was Bryan Danielson. Been a fan for about 10 years now. Love the stuff he did in Ring of Honor. Love his WWE persona. I love the little comedy that he's added to such a serious character. Great guy. I think as the years go on, he will move up and up my list. But as of right now, he's number 10. Now, the number 9 guy is a guy that would probably be much higher on the list if he had a longer lifespan. And that's Brian Pillman. Whether it be the Flying Brian character or the Loose Cannon character, the guy always entertained me. He was always someone I would put on my TV to watch. I enjoyed most of the stuff he did. It's a real shame that he died when he did, right at the beginning of the Attitude Era, because I think he could have been somebody that was a superstar and a main eventer all through that era. And our number 8 guy is someone that started in the Attitude Era. Actually, he was a couple different characters before that, but specifically we're talking about Kane, the Undertaker's brother. Now, a lot of people are big Undertaker fans. Me personally, I'm more of a Kane fan. I've always liked what he could do. To me, he's the more solid wrestler. He's around much more, especially lately. I just liked his character better. I liked his mask. I like the story with his unmasking. I like the remasking. I think he's done his comedy spots way better than Undertaker ever has. Plus, when he's serious and scary, he's one of the scariest wrestlers on the roster. Now going into our number 7 guy, CM Punk. Another guy much like Daniel Bryan that I really started liking in Ring of Honor. The first exposure I ever had to him was a defunct company called MLW, Major League Wrestling. And from there, I kind of followed him wherever he went. When he was in TNA early, when he was in Ring of Honor, when he made it into FCW, and then eventually the WWE, and rose to the ranks where right now he's probably the number 2 guy in the company, right behind John Cena. Again, like Daniel Bryan, if we do this list 5 years from now, he might be higher on the list. But as of right now, he's my number 7 guy. What can I say? What is there not to like about CM Punk? Now, our number 6 guy is probably the highest ranking guy on the list that just wrestled mainly as a face. And that's the heart and soul of ECW, Tommy Dreamer. Now, everybody knows, you guys know that have watched the show, I'm a huge ECW fan. This guy was basically the face of the company. My favorite feud of all time is Tommy Dreamer and Raven. Tommy Dreamer's a guy, I cheer the heels more than the faces personally, but he's a guy that I respected so much and like so much, and I enjoy so much of him that I'm happy to include him on my list. He's probably one of my favorite face characters of all time. Now, our number 5 guy is someone, that I caught really the tail end of his career, but since the age of the internet and YouTube, I've been able to go back and watch some of his older stuff, and the tail end wasn't bad either, and that's Handsome Harley Race. To me, Harley is a guy that doesn't get as much credit as he deserves. He came right before the cable TV era, so he didn't have as much of a national exposure. But he's a guy that I think most of the heels after him based their talent off of. Guys like Triple H, guys like Ric Flair. Harley Race was a consummate professional. He was known to do his hour-long matches, wrestled everybody in his time frame. I mean, there was a reason why when he went to the WWE finally, they called him the King. And he really was. He was a guy that was an innovator, and he's a guy that sadly, the longer it goes along, the more he's forgotten in time, but I don't think he should be. I think Harley Race is one of my favorites, and he's on this list as number 5. I really loved a lot of the stuff he did. Now our number 4 guy is a guy that's, speaking of Tommy Dreamer a couple back, Tommy Dreamer's biggest foe, Raven. Now to me, Raven, especially in ECW, was such a dark and different character than ever been on wrestling than anything before. He immediately captivated me. His work as Scotty Flamingo and Johnny Polo it was okay. I mean, it wasn't horrible. It was watchable. But once he became Raven, and he really delved into that side of the character, the grunge aspect, the mind control, the cult leader, I mean, it was amazing to me. And everything he did, the ECW run, his run in WCW, I think he was tremendously underused. I think he could have been somebody that was a world champion there. When he did eventually go to WWE again, I think they underused him as well. He's a guy who's fought off some demons in his personal life, which goes into some of the underuse of him, but he's a guy that I always liked. His character was so compelling to me that he's one of the guys that I'm always going to remember. Now our number 3 guys, I'm actually putting a tag team here, and you guys probably know who it is. It's the Bubba Ray and Devon, the Dudley Boys, Team 3D, whatever you want to call them. As you can see, this list is kind of ECW heavy. Again, I'm an ECW fan, but the Dudleys, the greatest ECW tag team, in my opinion, the greatest tag team of all time with it. They've won championships everywhere they've been, whether it be ECW, WWE, or TNA. I mean, these guys are someone that could come out there and be a tag team and wrestle in the main event at pay-per-views, and people would buy it. They're guys that were put together and just, it exploded. I mean, everything they did is total. I loved everything they did. I still love what they're doing to this day. I like their involvement in the Aces and Eights right now. Bubba Ray Dudley joining that really made the Aces and Eights a watchable thing, where for a long time it wasn't for me. I'd really like to see them go back to the WWE for one last run there before their career is over, but even if they don't, they're still one of my favorites. Loved them. I've loved them ever since they first teamed. Now my number 2 guy is actually the guy that got me into watching wrestling as appointment watching. Now I've seen wrestling before him, and I've seen it on TV as a kid. I didn't, I was young. I was 5, 6, 7 years old, so it wasn't something I followed religiously until I seen Roddy Piper. Something about him and what he was doing was so different than everything else on the television. He wasn't your normal heel like a Nikolai Volkov or an Iron Sheik or, the first shows I seen were WWF shows. He wasn't like the other cartoonish guys. He was more of a serious character, and he came off to me as a threat. He came off as kind of like the Joker in Batman. I mean, I thought Piper was one of the best talkers of all time. He's the guy that drew me in. I started watching every show because of Piper. I never really was a Hogan fan. I mean, of course, as a little kid, yeah, there were some times I did cheer for him against guys like Bundy and whatever. But Piper was a guy that piqued my interest the most, and he was a guy I was looking for most. And ever since then, I mean, he's influenced a lot of guys on this list, and he's the reason I started watching wrestling every week, because I wanted to see what crazy thing Rowdy Piper was going to do. Now, before I get into number 1, as we normally do in our lists, we have the best of the rest, guys that basically just barely missed our list. Now, let's go right into that. Triple H, a guy that gets a lot of flack by the wrestling internet community for who he's married to, but he's a guy that's always kept my interest. I liked him. I like him as a face, like him as a heel. Think he's a tremendous wrestler all the way around. Another guy is Nick Bockwinkel. Along the lines of Harley Race, came right before the national cable era really started. He's a guy that's influenced so many of these guys, He's a guy that if you go back and watch his stuff, I mean, it holds up to this day. And this is a guy that's wrestled since the 50s, all the way to the late 80s. I mean, to me, when I think of AWA, which at the time when I was a kid, I used to watch it on ESPN. And again, much like Harley Race, I've been able to go back and see before that. But Nick Bockwinkel was a guy that always screamed champion to me, and he's a guy I think of first when I think of AWA. Now, also in the Best of the Rest, my favorite import, the Great Muta. To me, something about him when he hit Jim Crockett Promotions and he was doing moonsaults and spitting green mist, I mean, he just captivated me. And I followed him and liked him ever since. Every time he came, whether it be WCW, NWA, he hasn't come to America much recently. He's done a couple things with Ring of Honor, a couple indie shows here and there. But even his Japanese work, I've actually followed some of, and the guy is amazing. He's very much an innovator. He's a guy, I mean, I think he's one of the guys that led to the faster paced style of wrestling in America, just as much so as a guy like Dynamite Kid did, people of that nature. But Muta, of all the imports, all the Japanese wrestlers, Muta was my favorite. Now, another tag team that's on my Best of the Rest list, the Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors. What can you say? Again, much like Piper, when I was a little kid, my first exposure to the Legion of Doom was the very end of their tail end of their run at AWA, when they were AWA Tag Team Champions, and much like Piper, they were so different than anything else on my screen. I mean, these guys would just come out and destroy people, and that would be it. They went on to go to NWA, which is what started getting me watching NWA. The area I was in, basically it ran, I could watch WWE show, they had a Superstars Challenge, and then the NWA, I think it was NWA Worldwide, I don't remember what the name of their show was, but basically it was 3 hours every Saturday morning that I'd be glued in front of my screen. And the Legion of Doom is one of the reasons why. Now this next one for the Best of the Rest isn't one of my favorites, it's more of a shout out. Since this is my list, the person that's influenced my life more than anybody else is my mother, Elaine Coles. She's no longer with us, but her favorite wrestler of all time, I'm putting him on my list just because of how much she loved him, was Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. I mean, she would sit there and watch this with me, and she wasn't a fan of wrestling. Most of the time, she didn't pay attention, but whatever Steamboat came on, she was all with him, cheering, rooting for him, and getting him on there. So he makes this list more for the memories that he brought me, and he's a tremendous wrestler, don't get me wrong. But he makes this list because he's my mother's favorite, and he's a guy that, when I think back about him, I think of my mother and the good times we used to have watching wrestling. Back when most houses only had 1 or 2 televisions, she would actually sit there and watch wrestling with me. That's what we got for the Best of the Rest. Now, if you guys like the list, if you think I put someone up too high, someone down too low, this is my list. These are my favorites. You're more than welcome to comment, say, who you like better. I would give Gary a spot, but as you can see, he's not here. Now, going right into it, our number 1 guy of all time, my number 1 favorite, Mick Foley. Whether it be Cactus Jack, Dude Love, Mankind, or Mick Foley himself, the guy is someone, from his early days, I seen him in World Class Championship Wrestling. I thought he was interesting, didn't really think much of it. Then he started showing up on different other shows. In Philadelphia, we had a channel that played different indie wrestling from around the country, and I would see him in these different little shows, and he slowly got crazier and crazier to when he actually showed up in WCW. He was Cactus Jack, and he was a fully fleshed out version of that character, and I was hooked. I said, ever since then I've been hooked on Cactus Jack. I thought he was great. I thought WCW really missed the boat on him. Then they let him go, and he goes into ECW and just, I mean, what can you say about Cactus Jack and ECW? I mean, some of the promos he said there, I can remember word to word for this day. That's how great they were, how great his work was. He helped elevate the promotion helped elevate him. He goes into WWF as Mankind, becomes an instant success, starts wrestling for their championship, and eventually wins the World Championship 3 separate times. He's a guy that the night he won the championship, it was a taped Monday Night Raw, for those of you who don't know the story. WCW Nitro says the results on their show. As soon as they say Mick Foley is going to win the World Championship, 600,000 people change their remotes to Monday Night Raw. And ever since then, Monday Night Raw never lost the ratings war again, and eventually killed WCW, so he was pretty much the death shot. But everything he did was entertaining. Even his Dude Love character was entertaining to me. The Hardcore Champion, the hardcore stuff he did, the King of the Death Match, the books he wrote are amazing. I mean, I can't say nothing. Even when he came back last year and he had the little thing with CM Punk that I hoped would be more, it was amazing to me. I mean, what can you say about Mick Foley? He's a guy that never should have been a star, that made it and captivated everybody that he touched. And that's why he's my favorite. He's a guy, he barely beats out Roddy Piper because of what Piper meant to me, but Foley was the guy, and Foley is always going to be my guy. I don't think I'm ever going to care as much about a wrestler and be as happy for a wrestler when they succeed as I was for Mick Foley. And I think he's a lot of people's favorites, to be honest with you. I mean, he's never was the greatest wrestler, but he did give the greatest emotion. He put his heart and soul and his body into wrestling and gave everything he could. He broke every single bone he had. I mean, the guy was amazing. To me, he's a #1 guy. But basically, that's what I have. That's my personal top 10 favorite wrestlers of all time. Feel free to debate it. Put it down in the comments. Let us know what you think. Gary's not here to do the down here, so just let us know. Let me know what you think. But I'm George Coles, and this has been a Heel Heat Top 10.